I can only tell the truth. I've been cursed with an illness where I can only speak the truth. When the king granted me a marriage and asked whom I favored, I blurted out, "Lord Selwyn is handsome, no doubt, but he's as fragile as a feather, coughing 100 times a day. He won't live long. General Lawrence, on the other hand, is ruggedly good-looking. With those muscles, he must have at least an 8-pack. But he looks so cold and severe, I wonder if he's prone to domestic violence?" I was simply thinking those thoughts, but to my horror, I realized I had actually said them aloud. I looked up to see Lord Selwyn and General Lawrence staring at me as if they wanted to devour me. I suddenly realized I'm doomed. Chapter 1. The room went deathly silent. I was so terrified, I felt like my soul had left my body. The king was laughing uncontrollably from his throne, his belly shaking with mirth. "Young Lady Whitlock is certainly honest," he said. "Ask her a question, and she'll answer it truthfully. I find her quite charming." My father looked like his spirit had fled too. He quickly recovered, offering an awkward laugh. "Wynne is still young and doesn't know better, Your Majesty." The guests at the banquet swiftly shifted the conversation back to light topics, and the chatter and laughter resumed. I returned to my seat, my face pale. On my left, Lord Selwyn was giving me a mocking look, while on my right, General Lawrence turned away, his expression dark and brooding. If looks could kill, I would have been butchered by now. Wiping the cold sweat from my forehead, I raised a glass to Lord Selwyn in a feeble attempt to patch things up. "Ahaha, Lord Selwyn, you look absolutely radiant. Surely you'll live to be 100. That's what I wanted to say. But instead, out came. "Lord Selwyn, what's with your twitching eye? Why do you keep glancing at me like that?" My own words shocked me. I clapped my hands over my mouth. Lord Selwyn's usually composed face cracked, and he looked at me with utter disbelief. I slapped my cheeks twice, trying to stop myself from speaking. But as I turned my head, I met General Lawrence's cold sneer. "What are you looking at?" "You're no different," I said, unable to stop. General Lawrence crushed the wine goblet in his hand. I was going to lose my mind. I gripped the edge of my skirt so hard I thought I might tear it apart. "Curse that root I found yesterday. The curse is real. I'm going to die, having offended both of these terrifying men." Chapter 2. Let me explain how all this started. Yesterday, my useless brother asked me to go buy rouge for his future wife. I was the most idle person in the household and couldn't refuse. So, off I went, grumbling all the way to the outskirts of the city. To make matters worse, I had to go all the way to a specific shop on the edge of town. Was my brother trying to torment me? Seething with anger, I borrowed a donkey from the housekeeper and set off. That's when the tragedy began. The donkey stepped on something, and I heard a faint, "Ow!" Startled, I dismounted to investigate. Nothing. But there, on the ground, was a ginseng root, shaped eerily like a little human. I thought I was hearing things, so I climbed back onto the donkey. But then I heard it again. "You damn fool!" This time I was sure. I quickly jumped down and picked up the ginseng. It immediately started cursing me, so I gave it a sharp slap. It kept cursing, so I slapped it again. Finally, it fell silent. "Oh my goodness, a talking ginseng!" I exclaimed. The ginseng spat at me. "You stepped on me twice. I curse you." I was about to stuff it into my pocket to bring home for my father's health, but it wriggled free and ran off. As it left, it shouted, "I curse you." I didn't take it seriously at the time. Little did I know it would come true. Chapter 3. At the banquet, I was restless and on edge, still reeling from my earlier blunders. Lord Selwyn seemed to be ignoring me now, which was a relief. But General Lawrence kept glancing at me with an unsettling smirk. It felt like being watched by a wolf. As the feast drew to a close, General Lawrence suddenly stood and bowed to the king. "Your Majesty, I must confess, I am quite fond of Lady Wynne Whitlock. If it pleases your Majesty, I humbly request her hand in marriage." My blood ran cold. What? Marry him? No way. General Lawrence was a seasoned warrior, often away at war, with no rumored love interests. Who knew what his personal life was like? And he was so intimidating, What if he turned violent after marriage? I was on the verge of tears when I caught Lord Selwyn's calm gaze. To my shock, he smiled. He must have found my expression amusing, because he rose and spoke in his usual composed manner. Your Majesty, I too have long harbored feelings for Lady Wynne. I intended to wait until she was a bit older to propose, but now that General Lawrence has shown his interest, I fear my treasure might be taken from me. I humbly ask your Majesty to bless our union as well. My scalp prickled. Were these two men playing a game? Lord Selwyn, who had barely ever looked at me when he was recovering at the estate next door, and General Lawrence, who had thrown me in prison for my mischievous antics in town. Why were they suddenly vying for my hand? Chapter 4. The king stroked his beard, clearly enjoying the show. Everyone says the young lady of the Whitlock family is most reluctant to marry, yet here we have two fine gentlemen vying for her affection. How interesting! My father had wiped his brow 100 times by now. Trembling, he stood to speak again. But I didn't let him. Just as I was about to refuse both men outright, a large hand clamped over my mouth. What do you think you're doing? General Lawrence whispered menacingly. His hand was rough against my face, hot and scratchy, making my cheeks flush with discomfort. I could barely breathe. Is it really appropriate to manhandle a lady in front of so many people, General? Lord Selwyn's cool voice cut through the tension like a blade. I knocked General Lawrence's hand away, trying to regain some composure, but the words flew out of my mouth again before I could stop them. Your hand is as rough as sandpaper. General Lawrence's teasing smirk vanished. At that moment, the king asked me the question I had dreaded all evening. If you had to choose between the two, Wynne, which one would it be? Without thinking, I blurted out, Lord Selwyn, of course. My mother always said I should marry a man I can control. Lord Selwyn is so frail I could subdue him with one hand. The room fell silent. Both men's faces darkened in unison. The king laughed heartily, but my father was frozen in horror. His face was so pale, he looked as though he might collapse at any moment. Thank you very much. Please pass me a sword so I can end this misery, I thought. Both of them glared at me as if they were planning to take turns burying me alive. The atmosphere was so thick with tension, I could hardly breathe. My father finally snapped out of his stupor and stepped forward to salvage the situation. Wynne is only joking, Your Majesty. She speaks without thinking, and if she has offended Lord Selwyn and General Lawrence, I beg their forgiveness. I will make sure she is taught proper manners in the future. I bowed deeply to Lord Selwyn, not daring to look up. He gave me a faint smile and in a low voice whispered, Don't be afraid. Startled by his unexpectedly kind tone, I looked up in disbelief. Was this the same Lord Selwyn who usually looked at me with such indifference? Next, I bowed to General Lawrence. He grabbed my arm before I could even bend down, pulling me up swiftly. Afraid, are we? But you didn't seem so scared when you fought me in the streets, did you? He said, his tone laced with amusement. I turned as white as a sheet. There was no use arguing with him. If I opened my mouth, things would only get worse. The king, still stroking his beard, finally spoke again. If it's too difficult to choose between the two, perhaps we should marry Wynne to the crown prince. He's older and more stable, and he could use some joy in the royal household. All at once, 3 voices erupted. No, no, Your Majesty, please reconsider. They all spoke in unison. I would have added my own protest, but my mouth was once again covered, this time by Lord Selwyn's soft, delicate hand. His skin was smooth, pale as snow. My thoughts wandered for a moment, imagining how it would feel to marry him and inherit all his wealth when he died young. I shook my head to clear it, and Lord Selwyn finally removed his hand. I have long admired Lady Wynne, Lord Selwyn said calmly, and just as she has expressed a preference for me, I would happily let her take charge of me. I ask Your Majesty to grant us your blessing. The banquet hall erupted into excited whispers. The golden heir of the Selwyn family, the refined and elegant Lord Selwyn, was willing to bend to the whims of Lady Wynne Whitlock, the notorious troublemaker of the capital? General Lawrence's gaze swept over me. I believe it's best to let Lady Wynne decide for herself, he said in his deep voice. And with that, All eyes turned to me once again. This time, I seriously contemplated faking a fainting spell. My legs buckled beneath me, and I almost succeeded in collapsing. But before I hit the ground, General Lawrence caught me. "It's all right," he whispered. "Say what you need to say." I wanted to die. If I chose one, I would offend the other. So why not just offend both of them? I blinked twice and took a deep breath. "I'll take both," I declared. Chapter 5. Of course, taking both of them wasn't an option. So I was given 3 months to make my choice. The entire capital was abuzz with gossip about it. There were even betting pools on who I would end up marrying. My brother kept pestering me, hoping I'd tell him who I preferred so he could place a hefty bet at the gambling house. I wanted to know the answer myself. After days of his incessant questioning, I finally made up my mind I'd choose Lord Selwyn. My mother agreed. "Lord Selwyn already said he'll listen to you, so life with him will surely be easy." But my brother shook his head. "I think you should go with General Lawrence. How long is Lord Selwyn going to live anyway? Besides, marriage isn't just about who listens to you, it's also about, well..." He trailed off, giving me a knowing look. I didn't quite catch his meaning, but instead, a thought hit me. That's right. If Lord Selwyn dies young, I'll inherit all his wealth. I exclaimed. "Mother, brother, I've made up my mind. I'm choosing Lord Selwyn." My brother grinned and dragged me to the gambling house to place his bet. I disguised myself in a fashionable men's outfit and tied my hair back, and we both rode to the gambling den. The place was packed, with people arguing over whether I would marry Lord Selwyn or General Lawrence. The odds were split 50-50. My brother threw down a stack of silver notes. "All on Lord Selwyn," he announced. The place went silent as everyone gathered around, muttering to each other. "You must be crazy, mate. General Lawrence is a war hero with half the army under his command. If he wants Lady Wynne, he'll take her by force if he has to." Nonsense. Lord Selwyn's delicate features are just what noble ladies love. Pah! I've bet on General Lawrence. I snorted in amusement. As I see it, neither of them is worthy of Lady Wynne. I've seen her in person. She's as beautiful as a heavenly fairy descended to earth. Before I could finish, a large, strong hand slammed me face first onto the table. "General Lawrence has arrived," someone shouted. The room went dead silent. I struggled to lift my head, but General Lawrence's weight kept me pinned. "Of all the people here, you had to grab me?" I groaned. He pressed harder. "What kind of gambling house allows such a ridiculous bet?" he asked, glaring at the owner. The owner immediately fell to his knees, trembling. "Mercy, General. The rumors in the city were so strong I had no choice but to accommodate the demand. Please spare me." I couldn't help but laugh. "General," with his words, "it seems you'll never let out another fart." I burst into laughter again, unable to stop. General Lawrence picked me up by my wrists and dragged me out of the gambling house. My brother, ever the opportunist, shouted as we left, "Switch my bet to General Lawrence!" Chapter 6. Soon enough, I found myself once again on the bustling streets of London, standing before the Good Citizen's Handbook that General Lawrence had handed me. He settled himself on a nearby bench, pointing at me with a single word. "Read. What law did I break?" I slammed the book down on the stone table. "Out of all the people in that gambling house, you just had to catch me? Who told you to go there in the first place?" He replied, "It was my first time." "How was I supposed to know you'd be lurking around? You did it on purpose." He looked down at me with amusement. "And why did you make up your mind about who to marry so quickly?" I swallowed hard, feeling the pressure of his gaze. His presence was overwhelming. "Does it matter? What's it to you? Are you jealous?" "Jealous?" General Lawrence scoffed, his voice low and dangerous. He stepped closer, trapping me between him and the tree behind me. "I don't get jealous. If I like someone, I take them." It was terrifying. He was a seasoned warrior, and his intimidation was no joke. I felt like a helpless rabbit caught in the jaws of a predator. When he saw how scared I was, he backed off slightly, his expression softening just a little. "So, Do you understand now who you should choose? General Lawrence asked, his voice a bit gentler, but still pressing for an answer. I thought for a moment about what I should say, hoping to lie my way out of this. Maybe I could say something like, "I'll think about it more carefully." But no, of course. My mouth had to betray me once again. "I'm choosing Lord Selwyn." "You're way too scary." General Lawrence's face darkened, his temper clearly reaching its limit. I could almost see steam rising from him. I looked around, realizing that a crowd had gathered, watching the entire spectacle unfold. I was filled with a mixture of embarrassment and fear. I could only imagine what sort of rumors would spread through the capital after this. Desperate and panicking, I felt tears welling up. "Wah!" I cried, the sobs bursting out before I could stop them. And just like that, I cried my way out of the situation. The story of how General Lawrence made me cry in the streets of London spread like wildfire. By the next day, the entire city knew about it, and it nearly overshadowed the gossip about Lord Selwyn trying to force himself on me at the Spring Blossom Inn. Chapter 7. After a few days of wallowing in self-pity, I hadn't eaten much and barely slept. I didn't speak at all, which only alarmed my brother. "What's wrong with you? Finally realized you've been eating too much? Even the richest ladies don't go without food like this. You're going to waste away at this rate," he said as he shoved a plate of greasy pork in front of me. I recoiled in disgust, unable to stomach it. "I need your help," I said suddenly, slamming my fist on the table for emphasis. His face shifted into something more serious, clearly confused. "What is it? You know I'll help you, no matter what. Is it something big? A duel? Blackmail?" I clenched my hands in determination. "You have to help me find a talking ginseng." My brother blinked, looking thoroughly bewildered. "Eh? What now?" I explained everything. How I had stepped on a ginseng that cursed me to only speak the truth, how it had run away, and how my entire life had spiraled into chaos ever since. 1 hour later, my brother returned with a renowned physician. "Brother," I shouted, furious. "I don't need a doctor, I'm not crazy." But the old physician merely smiled kindly as he measured out herbs, clearly not taking me seriously. I groaned and stormed out, furious that no one believed me. My brother looked guilty, but he didn't stop me. As I wandered the streets, I heard the hustle and bustle of the city around me, but it all felt distant. I leaned against a tree near the market square, feeling utterly defeated. And then I saw it. Amid the crowd, I spotted a familiar root-like figure darting between people's feet. The ginseng. That little monster was still in London. I felt a surge of energy and took off in hot pursuit, dodging through the busy streets. The ginseng was fast, slipping through the crowd with ease. I finally caught up to it, just as it was about to duck under a cart. "Got you!" I yelled, grabbing it by its tiny arm. It twisted around, glaring at me with its small, beady eyes. "What now, you annoying woman? Can't you leave me alone?" It spat, venom in its tiny voice. "Lift the curse, you little monster. You've ruined my life," I demanded. The ginseng gave me a sly look, then pointed behind me. "Look, there's General Lawrence." Instinctively, I turned, fearing the worst. When I realized I'd been tricked, the ginseng was already wriggling free from my grasp, darting into the crowd. But this time, I wasn't alone. "Looking for something, Lady Wynne?" came a smooth voice from beside me. I looked up to see none other than Lord Selwyn standing there, casually twirling a cane in his hand. Without saying a word, he reached down and plucked the ginseng out from under a nearby merchant's cart, handing it to me. I was speechless. "Thank you," I mumbled, cradling the ginseng like a precious treasure. I've been trying to catch this thing for days." Lord Selwyn's lips twitched into a small smile. I could tell. "Shall I accompany you home, Lady Wynne?" Grateful and still stunned by his unexpected kindness, I nodded. We walked through the streets together, and for once, it felt peaceful. That is, until I ran headfirst into someone. General Lawrence. Chapter 8. General Lawrence stared down at me, arms crossed and an eyebrow raised. "What's that in your hand?" he asked suspiciously. My heart raced. How was I supposed to explain this? Should I tell him the truth? But before I could even attempt a lie, the ginseng wiggled in my grasp. It's a talking ginseng, all right? I blurted out. It cursed me to only speak the truth, and I needed to undo the curse. Can I, grab something from under your coat to catch it? General Lawrence blinked, clearly dumbfounded. His eyes narrowed as he repeated my words slowly. A talking ginseng is under my coat? I didn't wait for permission. With a deep breath, I reached toward his waistcoat and, to his disbelief, pulled out the squirming ginseng that had hidden in the folds of his garment. His expression was priceless. Before he could react, Lord Selwyn stepped forward, handing me the ginseng like it was a delicate piece of art. I clutched the root tightly and ran off, shouting a hurried thank you over my shoulder, but my excitement was short-lived. General Lawrence caught up to me effortlessly, blocking my path. You're not going anywhere. Hand it over, he demanded. I was in no mood to argue. It's my ginseng. I caught it fair and square. I snapped, holding the wriggling root behind my back. I don't care. If Selwyn gave it to you, you're not keeping it, he growled, reaching for the root. In a split second, chaos erupted. I yanked the ginseng out of General Lawrence's grasp, only for it to spit in my face and wriggle free again, darting toward the nearest alley. After it, Lawrence shouted, grabbing my arm and pulling me along as we chased after the ginseng. Chapter 9. We chased the wretched ginseng through the winding streets of London, the little creature always just out of reach. It darted between carts, leapt over barrels, and slipped under fences. By the time we reached a narrow alley, both General Lawrence and I were breathless. And there, in the middle of the alley, the ginseng stood defiantly, as if waiting for us to make our move. I was about to grab it when General Lawrence's arm shot out, barring my path. Wait, he muttered. Suddenly, the ginseng dropped to the ground, as if surrendering. I hesitated, confused. Why had it stopped running? Then, to my utter disbelief, it spoke. Fine, you win, you annoying humans. I'll lift the curse. Chapter 10. I stood there, staring at the ginseng, utterly speechless. Was it really that easy? General Lawrence raised an eyebrow, clearly skeptical. You're going to lift the curse? He asked, his tone cold and doubtful. The ginseng rolled its tiny eyes. Yes, yes. You've chased me enough. I'm tired. Just try to speak a lie, and you'll see for yourself. I glanced at General Lawrence, and he nodded. Taking a deep breath, I looked at him and said, General Lawrence, you're the most terrifying man I've ever met. My heart pounded as I waited for the curse to work its magic. And then it hit me. I could say it. I could say whatever I wanted. I lied. I shouted, jumping in excitement. I can lie again. General Lawrence didn't share my enthusiasm. He simply grabbed the ginseng and handed it to one of his guards. Take this back to my estate. We'll make sure it doesn't cause any more trouble. I couldn't stop grinning, my head spinning with possibilities. I had been freed. The curse was gone. But as the reality of it settled in, I glanced up at General Lawrence, who was still watching me with those piercing eyes. So, now what? He asked, his voice low. I swallowed hard. The truth was, even without the curse, I still didn't have an answer. I didn't know which one I was supposed to choose, him or Lord Selwyn. Well, I began, my voice wavering slightly. Maybe I'll just need more time. He chuckled, though there was an edge to his laughter. More time? General Lawrence echoed, his laughter fading into a low growl. I've been patient, Lady Wynne, but time is running out. I could feel the weight of his words settle over me like a storm cloud. The playfulness that usually sparked between us had vanished, replaced by something much more intense. I swallowed nervously. Listen, I said quickly. I'll make my decision soon. I promise. But I really need to think it through. General Lawrence's gaze softened slightly, but his grip on my arm didn't loosen. You're still playing games, he murmured. But know this. No matter how long you take, I won't let Selwyn have you. He finally released me, and I stumbled back, breathing heavily. I'll take that into consideration. I stammered, trying to regain some composure. He turned to leave but then paused, glancing back over his shoulder. And Win, you'll find that being scared of me might not be the worst thing. Sometimes fear keeps people honest. With that, he walked away, leaving me standing there, heart pounding. Chapter 11. I returned home with my mind spinning. The ginseng was gone, the curse was lifted, but now I had 2 men waiting for an answer I wasn't ready to give. As soon as I stepped into the estate, my brother appeared, grinning like a fool. "Well, did you catch it? Did the curse lift?" he asked, eyes wide with curiosity. I nodded, feeling too drained to recount the entire ordeal. "It's over. I can speak freely again. So, who are you going to marry?" he asked without missing a beat. I groaned. "Not this again. I don't know yet. Give me a break, will you?" But of course, my brother wasn't going to let it go that easily. "You know," he mused, leaning against the doorframe. "Everyone's betting on you to choose Selwyn. The man's got charm, money, and influence. It's a smart choice." I frowned. "Yeah, but Lawrence is a powerhouse," my brother interrupted. "He's the kind of man you want on your side when things get tough. You'd never have to worry about anything if you married him." I rolled my eyes. I didn't realize I was choosing between a bodyguard and a bank. My brother laughed. "Hey, I'm just saying, either way you're winning, but you better choose soon before they tear each other apart." Later that night, I sat alone in my room, staring out at the moonlit garden. The decision weighed heavily on me. Both Lord Selwyn and General Lawrence had their charms, and both terrified me in their own ways. Selwyn's frail intellectual presence felt like a reprieve from the intensity of Lawrence's warrior demeanor. But there was a part of me that was drawn to the challenge of Lawrence's strength, the way he seemed to expect so much from me. But more than that, I was afraid of what choosing either one would mean for my future. Did I want the safety and predictability that Selwyn could offer? Or did I crave the excitement and uncertainty that came with Lawrence? A soft knock at the door interrupted my thoughts. "Who is it?" I called, turning toward the sound. The door opened slightly, and Lord Selwyn stepped in, his usual calm and composed expression in place. He didn't say a word at first, simply walking toward the window where I sat. "I heard the curse was lifted," he said quietly, his voice like a gentle breeze. "You must be relieved." I nodded. "I am. But now I have a different kind of problem." Selwyn raised an eyebrow. "Lawrence?" I sighed. "Both of you, actually. I'm not good at making these kinds of decisions." There was a pause, and then Selwyn surprised me by sitting down beside me. "You don't have to rush, Win," he said, his voice soft. "I'll wait for as long as you need. But I want you to know one thing." I looked at him, startled by the intensity in his usually gentle eyes. "If you choose me, I will make sure you never regret it," he said quietly. "I'll protect you in my own way. I may not be as physically strong as Lawrence, but I will never let harm come to you. I swear it." I was taken aback by the sincerity in his voice. Selwyn had always seemed somewhat distant, but now I could see that there was a depth to him I hadn't fully appreciated before. He stood then, smoothing his robes. "Take your time, Win, but know that whatever choice you make, I'll respect it." With that, he left, leaving me alone once more with my thoughts. Chapter 12. The next few days passed in a blur. News of the curse being lifted spread quickly, and before long, the palace sent word that I was to present myself before the king. As I rode toward the palace, I couldn't help but feel a sense of dread. The king was no fool, and I knew he would push for a decision sooner rather than later. When I arrived at the royal court, I was greeted with a sea of curious faces, all eager to see how this strange love triangle would play out. The king, seated on his grand throne, smiled as I approached. "Lady Win, it's been quite the talk of the kingdom, your little dilemma. Have you come to a decision yet?" I took a deep breath, feeling the weight of everyone's eyes on me. "I have," I said, my voice steady but my heart racing. "I've thought long and hard about it, and I've made my choice." The king leaned forward, clearly enjoying the suspense. "And who will it be?" I glanced around the room, my eyes landing first on General Lawrence, who stood tall and proud, his dark eyes fixed on me. then on Lord Selwyn, who stood with quiet dignity, his face calm but expectant. I took another deep breath. I choose. Epilogue, Lord Selwyn's perspective. Wynne made her decision months ago, and I've never been happier. To think that the notorious Lady Wynne, the wild and troublesome beauty of the capital, would become my wife, it still feels surreal. Our life together has been nothing short of bliss. She's as unpredictable as ever, but that's what makes her so captivating. Every day with her is an adventure, and while I may not have Lawrence's strength, I've found that I have something far more valuable, Wynne's heart. Our days are filled with laughter, our nights with peace. We travel, often exploring the world hand in hand, enjoying the beauty and freedom that life has to offer. Every winter, without fail, we build 2 snowmen in front of our estate, a tradition that started years ago, long before we ever knew we'd be together. Wynne still doesn't know that I'm the one who destroyed her snowman all those winters ago. Perhaps one day, I'll tell her. But for now, I'm content to keep that little secret to myself. Epilogue, General Lawrence's perspective. I should have seen it coming. Wynne chose Selwyn in the end. I respected her decision, even if it stung more than I care to admit. I still see them around the city sometimes, laughing and holding hands, the picture of a happy couple. It's hard to resent them when I see how genuinely happy she is. But I've moved on. There's a whole world out there beyond the capital, and I'm not one to dwell on what could have been. Still, every now and then, I catch myself thinking about her, about how different things might have been if she had chosen me. But that's in the past now. I'm a soldier, after all. We move forward, always.